So we are now in a post AJ Styles world, coming out of the Royal Rumble this past weekend in Saudi Arabia. Overall, I did think we had an okay show. Both Rumbles I thought were pretty entertaining for the most part. I actually think the Women's Rumble this year was a bit better, I think, with result and just how it was booked as well. I just want to start off with the Women's Rumble. With Liv Morgan winning, which I think a lot of people were expecting kind of going into this year, it does make the Judgment Day triangle kind of interesting because you have right now Raquel Rodriguez, who is currently gunning for that World Heavyweight title, and Liv, who now has an opportunity to maybe contend for a World Heavyweight title or the WWE title at Mania. So I think having kind of those type of things at play is extremely interesting. Everyone really looked cool in their Saudi gear, I think. We won't really talk about what I really think about the fact that they do have to do that, but beyond that, in general, just a really good fun show. You had good show outs from Lash Legend, you had Jordan Grace in the fold, you had a lot of NXT people, you had Sol Ruka and the NXT champion as well. It was a really fun opener to the show. The crowd was really into it. One thing about the crowd, though, however, it did seem kind of similar to that, the Money in the Bank that they had at the Intuit Dome. It seemed like there's a lot of empty seats at this show. Same thing with the SmackDown the night before. It seems like a lot of the tickets, or whoever was buying the tickets for the Saudi shows, I assume it's probably more of a move from the government or something to just buy out essentially all those tickets regardless of how they perform. So because we were advertised to sell out for the Rumble, but you can kind of tell, and people were pointing out online, due to the LED lights kind of behind each seat, you can very easily see the lack of crowd in certain shots. Despite that, overall though, the crowd was extremely vocal and super loud, kind of a trademark of most of the international crowds that we kind of get now. So it was really fun. They were bailing out to Randy Orton's theme, bailing out to Sammy's, giving everyone a lot of great attention during matches. Super shout out to the passionate Saudi fans. Your country and your government is not representative of the individuals that enjoy and love wrestling over there that are getting that opportunity. That's always awesome. Like I said, the Women's Rumble was really enjoyable, and I'm glad that Liv did win. She does kind of deserve it, but also I kind of want to see storyline wise how prominent the Judgment Day now becomes, kind of due to Liv's win. And I kind of hope that, piggybacking off of what happened with Finn and his past world title match with CM Punk, and it now seems like there might be a full program going forward, kind of with his involvement in the Styles Punk World Heavyweight match that happened on that past Raw. Maybe the Judgment Day will probably have another run, a prominent run, not Dominic focused, going into 2026, which I'm really excited for. I'm always for factions, having multi-layer stories that we can really dig into, that isn't just simply antagonizing the faces like something like Division, for example. So super excited to see where they go for Judgment Day. Super excited for Liv Morgan too. She's becomes if not the best heel, in the women's division, if not like Becky Lynch or Naomi, and it's those three in general are just super amazing at what they do, and kind of at the top of their game, and it's crazy to kind of talk about too, because I feel like these were women that were constantly underlooked and overlooked in their early parts of their careers, when they initially kind of jumped onto the scene, especially with such a stacked roster. Women's roster at the time, but for Liv to kind of come up, have that whole come up with the Judgment Day with Dom and really reveling in the heel persona. She really grown into one of the top stars that WWE has, and her finally getting this Rumble win, kind of cements her legacy as a top player. Super fun, super excited for Liv, and I kind of want to see where they kind of go with it, if Dom and Liv will be gloating on Raw, we'll see, but super fun. I enjoyed the outcome. We had Tiffany come back at number 30 as well, which I thought was pretty cool. I did think they would do her at number 2 to come out with Charlotte at number 1, but I did like the angle that they did with Alexa being number 2, her tag partner in her current storyline right now, and you kind of had that dynamic play out through the match. I had it pinned down that Bianca was probably going to return and win the Rumble, actually. I did not think we would have a heel win the Women's Rumble this year, but we did have Liv Morgan winning, so That was pretty cool. The second match of the night, which is probably, my match of the night, and also, AJ Styles' last match in WWE. I'll be frank. So at this point in time, I'm convinced, especially with what kind of went down later in the night, like, it's weird to me because, with Gunther, I think losing to Jay, it felt like everything now booking forward has been such an overcorrection to reclaim the aura that he's kind of lost, right? And while I agree with the booking decisions and stuff like that, and how everything has been going down, man, there are certain things I think that, like, when looking back, because with Roman winning the Rumble tonight, it dampers what I think should have been literally Gunther's night. Gunther and Styles right here have a amazing match. The crowd is super into it, really rooting for Styles all the way here. We're all sitting here, hoping that AJ wins because we want him to have a real be able to end the year on his terms, not in the realms of Gunther making him quit, right? And this match, while these two are at the top of their game, you felt that desperation and that struggle, and especially towards the last end of the match with the sleeper hold, and once that kind of came into play, it became that struggle for attrition, that fight to survive and stay alive, and it results with AJ passing out and Gunther winning. AJ did not tap out, thankfully, but he did pass out, refusing to give up, because in this context, in this situation, this was not Styles' finals match. He was fighting for his final match, you know what I mean? So completely different context in which Styles isn't choosing to give up, similar to like how John Cena did. After everything is said and done and Gunther exits the ring after winning and putting Styles to sleep, Styles gets up, attempts to remove his gloves, and can't. The crowd is pleading with him not to. They're heartbroken. I'm heartbroken after the tap out happening. The way it was done, AJ trying to fight out as much as he could. The ref constantly going to lift up the arm, and it going limp. And then going for the belt. Just absolute poetry and pro wrestling 101. What makes you feel? Everything in that moment was real. I got super emotional. It was AJ is, I've said before on this channel, he's one of my favorites of all time personally. He's one of the reasons I got back into wrestling and watched the greater world of wrestling in terms of TNA and the indies in Japan, because really of his involvement in those angles and those things. And after the fact too, with him refusing to take off his gloves and kind of walking out with that, it kind of gave me an inkling that he might actually not be entirely done with wrestling in terms of that in-ring competition, maybe just in terms of WWE. A lot of people have been speculating whether or not AJ Styles will be going on to maybe retire in a different organization due to the just lengthy amount of people that he's built his career with that kind of exist outside of that WWE bubble, since he is someone who's kind of made and created a legacy that does exist outside of WWE, which got him in there in the first place, right? So I think it is super fair, kind of a la Sting, where instead of retiring, with the WWE, he got a much better send-off reflective of his character and his legacy, beyond WWE's scope, when he did retire at Revolution in AEW and had that run with Darby Allin and stuff. I do think AJ Styles having a run in AEW, for example, would be gold. As a pro wrestling fan, someone like AJ Styles in AEW makes perfect sense. This is not like an Edge situation. This is more of a CM Punk situation, where CM Punk is someone who is about pro wrestling. AEW is about the pro wrestling, the bell to bell, and telling those advanced stories in the ring off the legacy of independent wrestling, territorial wrestling, and Japanese wrestling, right? So, and other international flavors of that independent and worldwide style, lucha, British, etc. So AJ being someone who kind of embodied always that type of, or adapting to those styles, and being that world-renowned traveler and megastar that then hit WWE and did the same thing. Him coming back in AEW to be able to run against Samoa Joe, who was one of his biggest rivals in TNA, if not his Randy Orton to his John Cena. You have, once again, like, he can have a run-in with Sting, which will harp it back to some TNA stuff. You can have him against Roderick Strong to bring back ROH stuff. You can have him against, an MJF in a dream match. Edge versus AJ Styles, even at this point, you can, there's so many different things you can do kind of with that. Once again, have him run it back with Will Ospreay. AJ, before he left, I think one of his last matches before he went to the WWE was against an AJ Styles. Maybe he goes back to New Japan, runs it, another, with some of the newer guys, maybe Yoja Shuji or something like that. There's a lot of different things he can kind of do on this way out, and I do think it would be awesome if he did kind of have an extended tour to acknowledge the world outside of WWE that kind of built him in the first place and established his identity. I think it would be an awesome roundabout way to see AJ Styles retire under his terms in a way that really celebrates his whole legacy, not just kind of what he did in WWE. So super, super saddening, but awesome match. What I hope is that now Gunther becomes the heel, with this, in my opinion, to have within technically the same 12-month span, basically, you had Gunther, Cena, and AJ kind of retired. You know what I mean? I do hope that the rumors of him retiring Lesnar are true as well, because I do think there needs to be a big built Lesnar-like entity to come in this generation, and I think Gunther is really that guy, especially with how they're booking him now. We've always kind of seen that, we've always kind of wanted that from him, and they're really pulling that trigger, which is why I even thought, despite, which we'll get into in a little bit, the Roman Reigns win, Gunther really should have also won the Rumble. After retiring AJ Styles, one of the best wrestlers ever at his prime, Gunther should have won it, especially at number 30, and been in cleared house, especially after most of the adversaries that would have given him a hard time have been eliminated, and basically, it was the final couple people left in the ring. I understand the hype of a Roman return. Roman is one of the biggest stars in the company, if not the biggest star. I get that, but Roman can get to Mania in any other infinite way, just like he did last year. And you don't sacrifice the Rumble spot for people who have been pining and building up their stock the majority of the year. Roman Reigns hasn't been here the majority of 2025. He had a handful of matches, and then, in terms of story, there wasn't really anything being done with him at all either. They were trying to get the vision over with Roman, and that kind of really failed and fell flat because, Bronson Reed in reality needs to have, I think, a bit more charisma and personality to kind of stand out, instead of just being kind of the big muscle bound guy. Beyond that, I think this was really Gunther's night to cement his prodigy like status. Yes, he's already cemented. He's a 2-time world champion. He's retired John Cena, the greatest of all time, but he just also retired AJ Styles as well, within a 2-month period. To me, this is akin to Brock's run when he beat the Streak, then destroyed Cena, and went on to kind of dominate the scene. I think a similar thing needs to happen with Gunther, because how many moments are we going to have of absolute heartbreaking devastation that don't pay off for Gunther's character in the long run? This is like a big building kind of thing where it's like it should kind of lead, which I thought, to a main event championship match at Mania, and I think the Rumble was the best place to kind of to display his dominance. And I don't really think Roman getting his second Rumble win here, especially after not having an involved year, is really the place for it to happen. I think a Roman Reigns return and Rumble win is not bad, and it's actually still not the worst thing that could have happened, which is why I'm not entirely mad about it. But I do think, especially coming off of what Gunther just kind of did that night, it kind of takes over the vibe of the rest of the night. Even the next match that happened with Drew and Sammy, super fun match. There was a point in time where we did think man, Sammy might get this fall right here. But, you know, in the end, Drew did win. But there was still that overtone of the fact that we just watched AJ Styles' last WWE match. And that kind of permeated over the rest of the show. And I think also, in a similar fashion to what happened at WrestleMania 30, it was a similar thing. You know, the streak was cut. And despite the Daniel Bryan kind of celebration, there was an undertone of, like, sadness and finality, because we just watched the streak be broken. People were just simply sad, you know, and that's kind of what happened with AJ, you know, and for it to kind of go down this way, especially in Saudi Arabia, you know, the quality of the match was amazing and everything was done in the moment to make everything seem awesome. But still, at the end of the day, I do think it's another done dirty situation. The same way that they didn't bring Cena with the full potential, and the same way that Gunther and Goldberg's build was not given the full potential it could have been. You know, so once again, you know, I think overall we had a fun show that does feel, with its results, kind of plotting in a way where, you know, I think besides the AJ Styles and Gunther situation, you know, going into Mania, we're not necessarily looking at what possible stories and big builds are going to happen. We're kind of jingling cards, or like shuffling our cards around, trying to figure out what is actually going to happen, because it doesn't seem like there's anything big on the horizon storyline wise that would shake things up. I mean, we'll see, I guess, what Roman has to say with the win, maybe. Moving forward in terms of who he challenges, for him to challenge Drew right now, I think would be kind of lame. I think that match is something that needs to happen overseas for it to really have any heat in it right now. You know, Roman Cody 3 is, I think, always a fun one, but I don't think right now is the perfect time, just because there's nothing gravitating the two towards each other, and the chance that they did have to even go into that, they decided not to really mess with anything after War Games. And then even in this Rumble, there was a bit of teasing between Jay and Roman, but even then it felt kind of second-handed and something kind of that you can brush off to the side unless they themselves want to, you know, use it for something, you know, but there's no obvious indication of what's going to happen. I still believe that Gunther should have won this Royal Rumble, especially after retiring AJ Styles. This should have been, because it would have just put the punctuation on what just happened there, you know. And then for now, we could have had a program with Gunther essentially going off for week, like he could be gloating and just rubbing it into everybody. I retired AJ Styles, Cena can't stop me, no one can stop me, and now I'm at the main event of WrestleMania, no one can stop me. And then you can have, like, you know, Punk being the defending champion kind of to that foil, and then you get that big huge rematch, you know, for Mania, you know, where you have the big evil Gunther against CM Punk, the last bastion of that generation of wrestlers that Gunther has put into the ground. That like writes itself. Maybe they can take that road using the Elimination Chamber. Maybe Roman and because I don't see Roman going for the World Heavyweight title. You know, maybe Roman, you know, and I guess Drew and Cody probably have a triple threat or something to that ilk down the line. I kind of see a multi-man match happening with the WWE title this year, not like a one-on-one. Just in general, though, I thought the Rumble, if I were to give it like a letter grade, it'd probably be a B-, C+. You know, it was entertaining, but I think the male Rumble and its ending was kind of flat. Kind of a lot of how certain things were booked. Ilya getting tossed out by Lesnar kind of making a joke of everybody again. Great, yes, everyone else sucks compared to the real fighter. I love when they do that. Beyond that, you know, it was okay event. You know, hopefully they kind of kick it up to high gear for moving forward, kind of going into Mania season. You know they always do, but I'm hoping that we really get some cool surprises, I guess, moving into this upcoming Raw and things moving forward. I heard Triple H say that this Raw tonight is going to be a new era. Whatever the hell that means, we'll see. So let me know what you guys kind of thought about the Rumble. I genuinely think Gunther should have won, and I also think, you know, even though if Gunther wasn't going to win and he was coming at 30, right? The way they booked that, it's so weird to me that they booked it that way and he didn't win. It just, to me, falls flat and makes AJ Styles and Gunther look weak compared to Roman Reigns, in my opinion. But I guess that's me probably thinking too much about wrestling. Who knows? Let me know what you guys kind of thought about the Rumble and what's going to go on tonight. You know, maybe we'll see some more setups for WrestleMania on this current Raw. Let me know what you guys think.